Thank you for joining us. I'm Henry House with Perquimans Live, and I'm fortunate enough to have Bobby Hanig. He is running for the 1st Congressional District for the state of North Carolina. Bobby, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate being here. Appreciate you taking the opportunity. So I'm State Senator Bobby Hanig. I'm currently in my second term as a state senator. Prior to that, I served 2 terms in the North Carolina House of Representatives. Prior to that, I served as the chairman of the Currituck Board of Commissioners. And in my public service, I chaired the Northeast Workforce Development Board right here in Hertford, right down the street here, for 4 years with the Albemarle Commission. I also served as the vice chair of the Currituck Chamber of Commerce. So for about 15 years, I've been working in Eastern North Carolina, getting to know folks, understanding the issues. The first thing I found as a commissioner was that we're not just a county, we're a region. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've always worked toward throughout my political career is bringing everybody together, knowing that in Eastern North Carolina, we're a lot stronger with multiple voices instead of one individual voice. And I think we've done a really good job of that over the years. You know, Dave Whitmer here at the Workforce Development Board was there. When I was there, we've stayed in very close contact. And just building those relationships over time have just been incredible. The things we've been able to do as a group versus individual counties has just been amazing. So blessed to do that. I'm an Army veteran, served in the U.S. Army, reached the rank of sergeant, opportunity of a lifetime. You know, lots of things that I learned in the military were really reinforced by my parents. My dad was retired Navy, career Navy man. And, you know, they did a great job of instilling what's important in our community.
And you joined the Army?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How did I go over with that?
Well, you know, he kind of encouraged it, actually.
Okay.
You know, he thought I had a better opportunity in the military. You know, he was my stepfather. He was a mechanic in the Navy. And I've always had a great aptitude for mechanical things. So, you know, I wanted to get a career as a mechanic, but I had more opportunities in the military versus, you know, being in the Navy. They just have, you know, giant engines. Whereas in the Army, they had, you know, more diverse, you know, opportunities.
Okay.
And I got to explore several of those, which made me a pretty well-rounded mechanic when I was finished.
All right, so you can wrench with the best of them.
Yes, sir. It was a good career choice.
Okay.
I've always been a heavy mechanic by trade, high school graduate. You know, I worked on tanks and everything, you know, from the old Jeeps you see on MASH to the brand new M1A1 Abrams and everything in between.
Okay.
So, you know, that's what I did. When I got out of the Army, I worked on different railroad maintenance equipment all across North America and a little bit of South America. Railroad maintenance equipment that it wasn't locomotives, it was equipment that maintained the tracks.
Okay.
Very large equipment, all big stuff. And then I was, as I moved away from that, I started working with heavy equipment, you know, front-end loaders, bulldozers, you name it, we fixed it. So that was my career, which kind of progressed into my pool business over time. And, you know, I was blessed about 25 years ago. Actually, this is our 25th anniversary for the pool guy.
Oh, congratulations.
Which is fantastic. Truly blessed, man. It's been a heck of a ride.
Okay.
It really has. I've always known that Eastern North Carolina would be, you know, just a land of opportunity for me. You know, I spent a lot of time in the northern 4x4 area growing up and getting to know people and the type of people that were in Eastern North Carolina. And, you know, I've done a lot of traveling in my time, and there's nothing like them. I've been living in Palace Point for a little over 30 years now, and this is where I'm going to be. My daughter was born and raised here. She's a 2nd grade teacher at Jarvisburg Elementary School, living her best life.
Okay.
You know, just had her first 8-week checkup, y'all. So bless us all.
Congratulations on that.
Gonna have a grandchild here pretty soon in August.
Is that your first?
Yes, sir. So
even better.
Life is good. Life is really good, and you know, which kind of led me to service. You know, I never thought about being a politician. Wasn't in, you know, nothing I ever, you know, thought about or was in my wheelhouse to think about. So I had built a new building for my office, and I had some issues with the fire marshal, and I contacted my county commissioner, didn't get any help. Well, fast forward about a year later, I was talking about it with some folks, and they said, you'd make a great county commissioner. You're well respected in the community. You're always doing stuff for folks, and you love doing that. And it's true. When I worked for the Workforce Development Board was my real first taste of having an impact on people's lives.
Right.
I have a high school education, so the ability for me to help someone that either their plant closed down or they made some bad decisions in life, they're on a bad path, to be able to get those folks back on track and to see them succeed was so fulfilling to me. And I said, man, this is pretty amazing. Number one, that I get to do even that as a chairman of a workforce board,
right?
Let alone as a commissioner. And then when I became a commissioner, I began to experience at a higher level that I could do more. And the opportunity came up to run for the House, and I talked with my board, I brought my whole board together and my county manager, my county attorney, and I said, what's the best thing for Currituck County? Where can I best serve us, to the best capacity? And they said, absolutely, you need to run for the House of Representatives.
Okay.
And I won, which is pretty amazing. That's kind of the way my career has just progressed over the years. Is those opportunities have come up, and I've always run in my initial race in the House and my initial race in the Senate. I was a severe underdog. They weren't expecting me to win. But they never figure in the Bobby factor.
Okay.
Nobody works harder than me. They just don't. I grew up in the military, so every 3 or 4 years, I had to, move locations and make new friends, and you just kind of understand people and get to know people in a different way. And having to prove myself time and time again has really helped me in the political realm. So when people get to know me, they know my story, they know how hard I work, they know why I'm doing it. And I think that's the biggest thing, is what people really find out is, I think a lot of people get into politics with the best of intentions. They really do. I really believe that. But sometimes all too quickly they forget why they got into it. The reason I got into politics was because I couldn't get help from my elected officials. So what's most important to me is my constituent services. That rises above everything else. And it doesn't get lost on me any single day that I have the opportunity to do what I do. Kind of a sappy little story. I live in my camper at the fairgrounds in Raleigh when we're in session.
Okay.
And I'm a very early riser. Folks that know me know that I get to the building at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Well, there's never any traffic. And again, this is my 4th term at the General Assembly. To this day, when I come in the morning, I stop right at the entrance of the General Assembly where the emblem's on the ground and the flags are flying, and I stop there every morning. And I look at that, and I look down the mall, and I look at the old Capitol, and it's a sight to see, sometimes I'll get out and I take a picture, take a selfie, and I'll post on Facebook, it's going to be a great day at the GA. You'd be amazed at how many people are up at 3 a.m. to start commenting or liking or whatever, right?
Yeah. And
so it's a thing I do, right?
Right.
But I do it every time. And people ask, well, how long are you going to be in politics? How long are you going to do this? When's your stopping point? And I said, well, I don't really so much have a stopping point, but I guess kind of the first time someone asked me that, that's the first thing that popped into my head was that I think when I stop stopping, it's time to go. Because I just don't appreciate it.
Right.
I sit there or I'll stand there and I'll look around and go, I'm one of 50 people that gets to serve 11 million people in the state of North Carolina. That's pretty daggone awesome.
And you have 10 counties?
I currently have 10 counties in my Senate district.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And how many counties would you represent making the
In NC Congressional, it would be 23 full counties.
Okay.
And a little piece of 2 other counties.
So 25 counties, a quarter of the state.
Yes, sir. But I will tell you that in my 4 terms in the North Carolina General Assembly, I've served 15 of those counties.
Okay, so they're familiar with it.
Very familiar with the counties. They're very familiar with me. I've worked hard for them, delivered for them. I go there all the time. I show up. I take their calls. I'll visit their houses, whatever it is.
Right.
I continue to do that even in my congressional race because my number 1 priority is my Senate job. Mm-hmm. People are counting on me.
So when do you start back
We'll start full session probably late April.
Late April.
Usually it's the third week in April. And, we'll go for probably about 6 steady weeks, and then we won't adjourn. We'll probably go all the way through the November election.
Okay.
But more of a, abbreviated schedule.
Okay.
Right. In the meantime, we have, there's always something going on. I think, not last week, but the week before, I made 3 trips to Raleigh because we had 3 different meetings. And I was doing, campaign stuff when I wasn't doing that. So, a lot of time on the road. So, we have interim meetings, oversight committee meetings, so on. I chair a couple of committees. So when we have those meetings, I typically chair or, I have a co-chair in one, so we'll take turns being the chairman. So plenty going on still in Raleigh, a lot of constituent issues all the time.
And, it reminds me, I don't think they have it in schools anymore. You used to have that pegboard up on the wall. And you put one peg in and you pull yourself up and you put another peg in, and you keep dragging yourself up to the next level. And that's what you're doing with your political career, so to speak. I'm using career loosely because
it's a brief
you're
time.
Enjoying doing this.
Yeah, and it's only been 10 years.
Okay.
I mean, it's been 9 years.
All right.
Which is amazing to me. Again, from the chairman of the Board of Commissioners to 2 terms in the House, 2 in the Senate, and now running for Congress in that short period of time. But it's been so many things going on. I've learned so much, and I've built so many relationships with all of Eastern North Carolina because I'm very active in all the coastal issues. I go to the byways conferences, and I don't just go up and make an appearance.
Right.
If it's a 2-day conference, I'm staying the whole 2 days.
Okay.
Because I learned stuff that makes me a better legislator.
All right, so let's dig into some things.
Okay.
All right.
What you got?
Quote unquote Shrimpgate.
Right.
You get our vote. How are you going to help navigate? Is that something that National Marine Fisheries can also impact what we're doing here?
You mean Shrimpgate?
Shrimpgate, yes.
Shrimpgate, yes, sir. Yes, sir. As you know, I was the lead opponent to that bill. They had taken a very, very good bill that helped both the commercial and the recreational fishermen.
Right.
And they were going to amend it to completely ban inshore trawling and trawling 2 miles off the coast of North Carolina, which would have wiped out the entire shrimping industry in the state of North Carolina, which was 22% of Hyde County's total budget.
Wow.
It would have been devastating beyond anything we could ever imagine. And they were doing it in a back room, and they had a plan, and we foiled that plan. A couple of maneuvers that, had it not been for someone notifying me about that amendment prior to the day that they announced it, it probably would have went through on a Tuesday and a Wednesday and went to the governor and become law.
Wow.
And then, we weren't able to stop it in the Senate. I had done several amendments in committee and done several amendments on the Senate floor. All got tabled, which means they're dead.
Right.
And then the last thing that I was able to do was they did the second reading, and it was, I forget the number, but there were only 4 votes against the amendment. And so we lost, but what came from that was we had the third reading, which is read immediately, the third reading without objection. Well, I objected to that, which moved it into the next calendar day, which also meant that the House was going in the morning, and they would not be able to hear it that day. And the following day was Juneteenth, so they could not hear that bill. The House could not hear that bill until the following Tuesday,
Right.
which gave the fishing industry the time to build our forces and come to Raleigh.
Okay.
And that's what saved that bill, saved the industry. So, I've communicated several times with Bobby Kennedy about the issue. He's on board with what we're trying to do. Trump is trying to expand the commercial fishing industry in the United States, and North Carolina is trying to get rid of it. So there's a whole lot bigger forces at play in the state of North Carolina, and I'll dive into that if you'd like me to. But so Bobby Kennedy is on board with us. He doesn't want the neon shrimp, and he doesn't want foreign shrimp coming in here or any type of foreign seafood because it isn't regulated as well as it is here in the United States. The first issue that he's battling for us is It's called port hopping. So a ship comes from China full of shrimp, and it's turned away at the port of Wilmington.
Right.
Okay, well, as soon as it gets turned away from the port of Wilmington and goes to the port of Norfolk, well, it's no longer coming from China, so they don't inspect it. And that's how they get it in here. It's a loophole that they're using.
So that's something on the federal level.
That's correct. That has to be changed immediately, and Bobby Kennedy's working on that for us,
Okay.
among a couple other folks. So it's things like that, just having those relationships between the state and the federal over so many years that I've worked, for North Carolina. Whatever issue it is that comes up, I know who to reach out to, and I've built those relationships. Just understanding, you're not calling, you talk to of course, our federal delegation, our congressmen, our state senators, but the people you talk to are the people that are in the trenches getting it done. Mm-hmm. And I know those people, and those are the people, that's how you get things done. It isn't by calling a random congressman from Wisconsin or something. They're not in tune to what we're dealing with.
Right. So you've built relationships over the last decade.
Yeah, whether it's the fisheries, whether it's the issues we have with coastal erosion, water quality, whatever it is, I've dealt with those issues.
Coastal erosion is definitely an issue.
It's a big issue. It isn't an easy issue. Everybody knows that and understands it. There are a few people that just, get on social media. I love social media. That get on social media and just start ranting and raving because they don't understand what it's going to take. And it is not an easy solution. We have a great friend in Dave Halleck with the National Park Service, Cape Hatteras National Seashore. We couldn't ask for a better partner that is always trying to help us and always engaging with the federal folks. But the monies that he's competing with are Yellowstone and Yosemite and all the big national parks.
Which charge admission to get into versus...
Right, correct.
Okay.
Free.
Yeah.
Right. So, there's a funding issue. You have federal land, you have homes that are built, on state roads, on federal property. So all the agencies are involved, and it isn't $10 million, it isn't $20 million, it's hundreds of millions of dollars.
And that's just to get started.
That is just to try to Band-Aid it.
Right.
But the bigger issue there is we've been so over-regulated over the years that we have been hamstrung on what we can do to protect our coastline. So, several years back, I started engaging with my federal partners, my congressmen, both of my state senators, and a few people at DEQ up there, and a few people at the Army Corps that can make the decisions and make the changes. And I think they're on board. Mm-hmm. It's more of a political issue, and how do we navigate the political side of it? So it's deregulation is the first thing that we have to have happen. North Carolina, we are banned from using any hardened structures on our coastline.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have to figure out what's the right move. Is it making a bunch of jetties? No, that isn't the right answer. Is it making a bunch of horizontal jetties? No, that isn't the right answer. But when you're combining all the different ways that we can stabilize our shoreline, then there's a better answer. Mm-hmm. We can't continue to pump sand onto our beaches. We don't have an infinite amount of sand out there. People think, well, the ocean's just full of sand. Well, it isn't. And you're also, because of the over-regulation, you're limited on the type of sand that you can put on the beach.
Right.
Like we dredge Oregon Inlet all day long, every single day that we can dredge. Mm-hmm. But we can't use that sand on the beach because it's not the right sand because of regulations. So, if we can keep...
Sand's not sand?
No, sir.
Okay.
It is not sand. Sand is not sand. So, it has to be a certain grade, it has to be a certain coarseness, it has to have certain criteria to fit it, and there's a limited amount out there. I mean, our ocean bottom is rock. It isn't sand.
Right.
So, the harder and harder it gets to get the sand onto the beach, the more and more it's going to cost.
So where does all the sand on the beach go?
Right. It's out there, right there. We could talk for about a day and a half.
And we don't have time for that.
It's there. Right. So basically what you're doing is you're filling in a hole. Mm-hmm. Right. So you nourish the beach and it slides in and gets to it's right. Even. Then you do it again and it slides in and then it's higher. So it just takes years of doing it and tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. But eventually, you're going to run out.
Right.
And I can use an instance like Currituck. So Currituck has never done nourishment. Pine Island did a nourishment project on their own, through their association, because they had a couple of bad hotspots.
Right.
There's some issues in the northern Corolla area, but for the most part, they're not that bad, right? And the reason that is that Virginia Beach has been doing it for decades.
Right.
So when we have a nor'easter, that sand's coming our way. And Dare County has been doing it for years, so in the summer months, that sand drifts our way.
Okay.
So there's many places in Currituck that our beaches are actually building as theirs erode.
There's a resource for Currituck to make a couple dollars.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
That's correct. So, the issues are enormous. You get to Ocracoke, the road washes out. There's no access, for the car ferries. So, been talking with the citizens there for at least a couple of years on the hard decisions. Do we make a decision to go, okay, well, we need to limit our amount of car ferries and bring more passenger ferries into Silver Lake? Well, if we do that, that's great. Dave Halleck says, look, if you get them into Ocracoke, I can get them to the beaches and I can get them to the shops.
Right.
And that's what the goal is, because it's a huge economic development factor for Ocracoke.
Right.
I mean, it's a very large part of their budget, and without it, they're already in trouble, right? To not have Ocracoke in the mix would be devastating to them beyond anything we could imagine. So it's making the residents understand that it isn't really a choice. That this is what's going to happen. And there are better ways to manage the ferries, of course. They tried to, toll our ferries this year, and that was my first big stand this year was, they came to me and said, hey, we're going to toll our ferries. Well, no, you're not. I'm not going to let that happen. Well, they said, yeah, we are. What do you want it to look like? And, I gave them a plan of what it looked like, and they said that was good. And then the budget came out, and it wasn't anything that I had agreed to.
Right.
So I tried to, negotiate that down for a couple of days, and that's all we had. We saw the budget on Monday and had to vote on Wednesday. So I tried to amend it to get them to change it, and I couldn't get any motion. I tried to amend it on the Senate floor, got shot down, and I had to vote against our own budget. Republican budget, I was the only Republican to vote against it. It was a tax increase for my citizens. And I just said, I can't do it.
Now, you're mentioning budget, but I'm under the belief that we have not had a successful budget.
Correct. So by North Carolina's Constitution, we have what's called a continuing resolution. We are not mandated to have a new budget every biennium.
So you will have experience getting inside the Beltway with not having a budget on a regular basis.
And that doesn't make it okay.
I understand.
It's extremely, extremely frustrating that, we have corner offices, and it isn't the general membership. It isn't the Republicans. It isn't the Democrats. It isn't, in the Senate or in the House. It's corner offices that simply can't agree on a couple of issues. Understand, our budget was right at $36 billion this year. We spent $34 billion and some change already. So what we're lacking is a couple of $1 billion that hasn't been resolved.
Right.
Which is why we don't have a final budget. And yes, it's very frustrating. So many issues I had to deal with because, if something is a one-time funding and it's been a one-time funding every budget cycle, it's hard to get recurring dollars. So typically when you have something new come on, it's funded with every year it gets put in the budget, right? Mm-hmm. As an appropriation. Until it's there long enough, they say, well, we've been doing this, it's successful, let's make it recurring. You don't just automatically get funding, right?
Right.
So understanding that, there are many things throughout the state that get funded every year in the budget that are not recurring. Well, if you don't have a new budget, they don't get funded again. So you have to do what we've been doing, most of the year is doing mini budgets. We come in, okay, well, what is time sensitive? What's time sensitive for the western part of the state? I think we did, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, someone out there, I know you will. So 3, maybe 4 mini budgets because we had to make appropriations for the western part of the state.
Because the hurricane.
Correct. We had to keep funding things and changing laws to where these folks can actually get something done, mm-hmm. right? And on top of that, all the other things that we hadn't funded because we didn't have a budget. putting those things in there so things don't get shut down, so programs don't get shut down.
Okay.
So a lot of challenges because of that. And it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating to the members. I think we're doing a disservice to our community throughout, to the whole state, for not finishing up just a small portion of the budget so that people can be made whole.
Okay. So let's talk about some things on the federal level that we're going to. One is infrastructure.
Right.
Okay. Some of the people who are running for the seat that you currently hold, I've addressed the issue about the infrastructure, let's say, in the town of Hertford. The plumbing is getting completely upgraded, so to speak.
Right.
But there's other communities that are in the same condition as us, or maybe worse.
Right.
Highways,
Right.
getting back and forth. We talked off camera before we sat down about, some of us traveling up to Virginia Beach and Norfolk for work, and we have 17 is our main byway to go
Right.
up there for. There's talks about it becoming an interstate.
Sure.
So how do we move forward with this? Because the interstate has been talked about since I've been down here.
Right.
And
Well, I can talk at length about the interstate if you want to start with that.
Well, can you give me the Cliff Note version of the interstate?
I'll give you the Cliff Note version.
Okay.
First year I was a commissioner, the NC East Alliance had a conference in Greenville, and they talked about the proposed I-87 corridor from Raleigh to the Virginia line.
Right.
At that time, it was a 25-year plan. They were very open and transparent. They said, this is a 25-year plan. This is what we propose that it looks like when it's finished. Understand that, it's going to take, it just takes time to get these things done, right? So they made a bunch of improvements, primarily on the south end. Well, my first question was, well, why aren't we starting on the north end where all the commerce is coming from? And why don't we have a spur from, Elizabeth City or Camden over to the port coming through Currituck so they have a direct line to I-87?
Right.
And you'd have thought I was chopping somebody's head off when I said that. Well, guess what they have now?
They have a spur.
They have a spur going from Camden through Currituck to hit the interstate right there to get for a better transit
Right.
down to I-87.
Okay.
So things are, a lot of times, and I'm not just, because it's frustrating to me too, I'm not justifying it. A lot of these things just take time before they come together. But I've always been a proponent of starting on the north end first. When they were first proposing it, 17 just emptied into a neighborhood, basically. I'm like, well, why are we doing this? It didn't make any sense, right? So that's been improved. So you see, improvements and changes on the north and the south end. And then we'll start seeing the changes in the middle. But when we have a Helene or we have a whatever it is, those funds get drastically cut.
Right.
So how do we fund these projects?
And part of the challenge is the elimination of at-grade intersections.
Correct.
So the town of Hertford
Right.
is not sitting pretty in that situation.
Correct. If you bypass downtown Hertford, what happens at downtown Hertford? That's a problem.
Right.
Right.
So 17 essentially bypasses downtown Hertford now.
Yeah.
And the bridge that we have, on 17, I don't think passes these standards.
Correct.
To put the ramps on in order to get off into Hertford, so you have a different face for the town of Hertford.
Correct. Lots of challenges.
Yes. So
this
is just our neck of the woods.
Right.
And I know going further up north, once you get past Elizabeth City, a lot of at-grade.
Yeah.
Having traveled, a lot, you do more than I do over to Raleigh. There's,
Right.
Eventually you get to a highway situation, but 17 is
Right. A couple of spots where it's 70 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And understand, and for what it's worth for folks that haven't lived here a long time, I started traveling that road when it was 2 lanes.
Okay.
When you stopped at every stoplight coming through every town, all the way to Raleigh, it was a solid 4.5-hour ride to Raleigh. Now it's 3 hours and 15 minutes. So we have had improvements. We got a lot more to do. And oftentimes people say, well, we're just neglected in the Northeast. And, to a point that is true, but over the last several years, because, and to get a little bit political with it, we've had mostly Republican leadership.
Right.
And that's working together for the same goal. So when we have 4 and 5 and 6 House representatives and 3 or 4 senators all working in the same direction that are in the same party, working for the same area, we get a lot more done. And that's what we've been able to do, I mean, throughout Eastern North Carolina, without question.
But, this would be a federal highway, so
Right.
we need the federal dollars.
That's correct.
So you could be an advocate.
That's correct. And like you take the Alligator River Bridge that was in such disrepair, well, still isn't. Been stuck there more than once, so
Yes.
understand that. Once it was like at like 2 in the morning in a nor'easter. And like,
Oh, that's a fun place to be.
it was a great time.
Yes.
It was a really good time, and we sat there for about 2.5 hours, and the waves were literally splashing onto my car, just sitting on the bridge. Good times.
Yeah.
So we can't get funding, we can't get funding, we can't get funding. Well, having a constant communication with my federal partners, I was talking with Wally Overman in Dare County one day, and he said, we're still trying to do this, we're still trying to do that. And I said, something came across my desk about, and I forget what the program was, but I need to call up Senator Tillis's office and see if we would match into that. And no kidding, it wasn't a week later, I called Wally and said, Wally, we got the money for the bridge. He said, you got to be kidding me.
Oh, great.
He didn't say that.
Yeah, not like that.
He
but-
might have had a couple adjectives thrown in there.
Okay, no harm in that.
No harm in that. He was very excited. And now you're seeing that bridge built.
Yeah.
But again, that's just from being in tune and having the relationship to be able to call that person and say, hey, I think we might fit into this program.
Now,
And sure enough, we did.
Now,
which is incredible.
how would having the interstate in place change our community? Would it open us
Right.
to
Well-
more opportunities to have employers come into the community?
Right.
I mean, it gives us readier access, easier access to things outside.
Right.
But how does it impact
Right.
where we live?
Well, it's the cart horse thing, right? The way infrastructure is really set up in North Carolina, it's a lot different than it was even 30 years ago or 20 years ago. It's more of okay, where's the development coming? Where are the jobs going, right? And what do we need to get ready for? So there's been several things in the works in Eastern North Carolina, one of which will greatly affect Perquimans County, Hertford, and several counties in the Northeast. There's some economic development that's coming to Hertford County that we'll be making an announcement on very, very soon.
Okay.
That will literally transform Eastern North Carolina.
In Hertford County or Perquimans County?
It's in Hertford County.
Okay.
But it will draw jobs from at least 8 different counties.
Okay.
That's how big this is.
Gotcha.
It's something that I've been working on, and Representative Ward have been working on. A very big project coming to Hertford County that will
Make it worth the commute to go to work.
it will make it worth the commute to go to work. It is one of the largest initial projects that we've had in Eastern North Carolina probably in 50 years.
Okay.
And when it's all finished, said and done, it'll be the largest economic project we've probably ever had since we started planting tobacco. That's how big it is.
Gotcha.
That's how big it is. And that took 2 years of work with Hertford County, a couple other surrounding counties as well, because all the surrounding counties are going to be heavily impacted by this. So surrounding counties, primarily Hertford County, the folks in commerce in Raleigh, the folks in commerce in DC. The president has gotten involved in this project, more to come.
Okay.
So there is a lot going on in Eastern North Carolina that is really going to set up Eastern North Carolina. So I got involved with the NC East Alliance and their education program about 2 years ago. They came to me with an economic development project that we don't have economic developers in every one of our counties because we're small. We're small, and we don't have a lot of funding, right? So basically what it does, very high level, is it teaches our teachers how to be economic developers. So in the last couple of years, we've had summer programs and a couple of winter programs that teachers come and they understand, they get to understand what's in their area, right? So they don't know, like we had a Blue Economy series. So we worked a bunch of coastal communities that teachers came and spent, several days learning all the opportunities there are in Dare County to stay in Dare County, to get an education. You don't necessarily have to go to college, but you can get an education. You can work in a field and not have to move.
Okay.
So it's keeping our students at home versus, finishing high school, going to college, and moving to Raleigh.
Gotcha.
So several of these things have been working, and it's been a huge success. And the teachers love it. And at last count, I don't know the exact count now, but my last count was we had 29 school systems, like 31 counties, the community colleges, several universities, and the sponsors are growing and growing and growing. It was something that I knew if we got it started, that it would just escalate and eventually be able to take care of itself, and that's what's happened.
Okay.
So things are happening.
Going inside the Beltway.
Yes, sir.
A lot of things happening on the national stage right now.
Right.
Recently, Trump sent a team in and went into Venezuela.
Yes, sir.
Brought the president of Venezuela out, and he's will be standing trial in New York.
Yes, sir.
There's rumblings going on in Cuba that they are starting to get a little pinched on things because we cut off the oil supply from Venezuela.
Sure.
Speaking of oil, right now there's a cauldron boiling over in the Middle East. I know that's hard to imagine, but maybe finally after nearly 40 years, we're going to see a change of leadership in Iran.
Yes, sir.
And our naval battle group is sailing in at this point to hopefully stabilize the region.
Correct.
The acts that the president takes as a member of Congress, how would you support or make requests that should he have done anything different in Venezuela, in your opinion? The interaction with potentially Cuba, what type of stage do we step up if something happens in Cuba? We already have a permanent base there. The issues in Iran has a global impact because if oil stops flowing out of Iran, or oil starts flowing out of Iran, the prices are going to get potentially limited, which will change the benefit of doing oil in the U.S. We have situations in Canada. So the entire world is kind of like, at a simmer right now.
Right.
Congress is a separate branch of government, but things are brought forward before you. What is your opinion of what's going on?
Well, there's always a cauldron brewing.
So there is.
And everyone looks to America to solve their problems. Because, quite frankly, that's why we're here.
Okay.
God put us here for a reason. And that's what we're doing. We're protecting the world, we're saving the world. When you come to something like Venezuela, he had every opportunity to do the right thing. He was not the president of Venezuela anymore. He was duly elected out. He stayed there by force. He had the opportunity to do the right thing with his oil exports, and didn't. He chose to sell drugs instead. Mm-hmm. He's not a good actor. He's a bad actor, and he isn't just hurting Venezuela. He's hurting all the countries around Venezuela, and really the world. Understanding that our peace and our strength comes from military dominance and from an oil or natural resources dominance to help the world, that's important. And he needed to be removed.
Okay.
And he had every right by the Constitution to do that, and I support that 100%. People said, well, he should have approached Congress. Well, Congress can't keep a secret.
Well, we also have the gang of 8 in Congress.
Right.
So.
We would have never have pulled off that.
No.
Pulled that off. There's no way that would have happened. Did he do the right thing? Absolutely. Is he doing it for the right reasons? Absolutely. As the world evolves, minerals and what's under the earth is really what's going to determine dominance throughout the world.
Now, are you concerned China has become essentially the resource of a lot of the precious minerals that we have,
right.
That we need for our manufacturing, for our gadgets,
right.
cell phones,
right.
etc.
Right.
Are you concerned that China has a stranglehold on that? And then we were talking about Greenland
right.
potentially having maybe even more resources consolidated than what China does.
Right.
And how does that impact our NATO partners?
Right. Well, first off, I never believed that Trump was going to take over Greenland by force. And the other side knows that.
Right.
They know, as quirky as it sounds, the art of the deal. He was out there blustering and doing this to make a deal. Mm-hmm. And he made a great deal.
Yeah.
Not one shot's fired, nothing's happening, everybody's happy. That's the art.
Well, everybody's happy except for the people who, didn't like the idea in the first place,
right.
because it didn't go to their narrative.
Right, exactly, and that's what it is. It's all about a narrative. They know in their hearts that it's the right thing. It's no different than what ICE is doing. When Tom Homan worked for Barack Obama, he got bonuses based on how many people he deported.
Isn't it different how we have taken?
The only thing that has changed is the president.
Right, but
it's still the same policy.
15 years ago, we were all applauding this.
Correct.
Okay, and today it's like, well, we can't do it, and
right.
it's really strange how, and maybe not necessarily even just the president, because we turned a blind eye. I don't think it, regardless of whether it was Trump or another Republican in the White House, if they took a strong stance against immigration, the entire world would throw their arms up. Well, at least,
of course,
at least in the United States.
People are saying, well, ICE is doing this, and ICE isn't trained well. ICE isn't trained to be in these. Well, no, they're not. ICE is trained to extract bad people. That's what they do. That's their function in the government. Local law enforcement and sheriffs and municipal law enforcement are the ones that are trained in crowd control and riots and so on. If the simple fix is, if all of these sanctuary cities cooperated with ICE, we wouldn't have these riots. None of these people would have been murdered. Think about where all the issues are happening. Mm-hmm. They're all happening in sanctuary cities, right? So if you eliminate the let's not help ICE factor, right, then none of this will be happening.
Okay.
None of it.
Well, let's
fixed.
Let's say a little community here, we had a nice problem, okay? You're sitting in DC. I kind of already have an idea where our governor's going to come down, but the local sheriff, says, he's told by the mayor, no. Who do you call and say, hey, Sheriff, thank you for supporting and protecting our ICE people? We don't want to see a situation that a civilian gets caught in a crossfire, even if they're protesting. We don't want to see anyone harmed. Right. We don't want to see a loss of life. But part of that is caused because the local government is not doing their part in protecting their citizens.
That's correct. So when the local government doesn't cooperate with ICE in North Carolina, they're breaking the law, because we instituted that law in 2000. Forgive me the date.
Okay.
It runs together.
Yes, it does.
It is against the law for any government to obstruct ICE in the state of North Carolina.
Even if the governor says you're allowed to turn the other cheek.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's illegal for the governor to do that. Okay. They have no lawful ability to do that under state statute, which is a law that we passed and the governor vetoed, and we overrode his veto. Okay. So anyone that does that is breaking the law.
And they can choose to prosecute or not.
They can. Here's your problem. We have a Democrat AG, so he is not going to prosecute them.
And this is where I'm headed as you're walking down that path.
Right.
And there's things that you can do as a congressperson to listen.
Sure.
But immigration. in a lot of your districts, there's a lot of farming communities.
Yes, sir.
And
lots of immigration.
There's lots of immigration. They'll go from
Right.
one field to another field to another field.
Sure.
How do we support our local farmers
Right.
effectively, that they can get planting done, get harvest done with people who are immigrants, not citizens?
Right.
How can we support them so that they can still operate?
Okay, there's a couple things that we need to prove on the federal level. We don't need to make it easier to become a U.S. citizen.
Okay?
And this is conversations, and you don't know me very well, but I'm going to tell you this is how I work. I had the conversation with the immigrants. Some illegal, some illegal. I mean, some legal, some illegal.
Right.
And understanding the whole picture, right? And even illegal immigrants agreed, a little bit of translation issues go.
Sorry about my...
That's all right. It's a good guard dog. Understand that, and they're the ones that tell me, both legal and illegal immigrants, both told me that they don't want to make it easier to become a U.S. citizen. They want to make it harder.
Right.
Because they want the good people to come to America. They don't want the bad people here, right?
I've heard the same thing.
Right? Now understanding that, these people are in impoverished countries and they want to come here. What we're not doing is you can make it harder but still make it faster. We can walk and chew gum.
Right.
And the process is so embedded in bureaucracy. It takes entirely too long to get a work visa. It's entirely too difficult to get H-2B workers. Those processes need to be cleared up. That's our first step in solving a big issue for our farmers.
Right.
Because it's such an arduous process to get the HB2 workers here, or any type of workers. They stop trying.
And it's a burden upon the farmer.
Correct.
Because there's a reporting requirement that he has to
That's
fulfill.
correct.
And if he doesn't dot the I, cross the T, he's subject to fines also.
That's correct. The system, and anyone can sit here on camera and say the system needs to be reworked. But the system needs to be worked. It's just so overbloated. If we were to go in there and cut half the employees and streamline it, then we have a lot less of an illegal immigration problem. Because people know they can, in 3 months or 6 months, they can go from living in Mexico to living in the United States on a work visa. And, there's a better process, but now it just takes years and years and years.
Right.
And people give up. Well, they don't have time to wait years and years and years. They have a starving family. We have things that need to be done in the United States. And, when it comes to the farming issue, our prices are so high because, we're saying, well, it's because we're not using the illegal immigrants. Well, it goes deeper than that. Look at our commodity prices. There are basically 4 companies that control the commodities and control the pesticides and everything else that go, and those prices have skyrocketed over the last several years. So before a farmer can even get anything in the ground, he's being overrun with
And, farming's changed in the last... in our lifetime.
Right.
We'll use it.
And in the last 4 years, outside of the tariffs, in the last 4 years for farmers in eastern North Carolina has been horrific. Primarily weather, hurricanes, droughts, overrain, you pick it. The cotton industry has suffered dramatically, and the forestry industry has suffered dramatically.
Now, we can't control the weather.
We can't control the weather.
Okay, so...
Some people think we can. I'm just saying.
I'm being pretty impressed when I get the notification. Rain will start in the next 15 minutes on my cell phone.
Right.
14 minutes it's raining. So
I actually had people that emailed me and called me and said, well, the issue that happened in the western part of the state was man-made.
Oh.
Yeah. They did. The government did that on purpose.
Yeah, because...
Yeah,
we were trying to lower the population and everything.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. The tinfoil hats that really...
it makes perfect sense. Right.
Okay. So, sometimes there's things that we can't say because we're on camera.
Right, and yes, there is some degree to where, the technology has been created where they can, create, some type of an environment that's favorable for rain, but something of that magnitude, anyway.
Not to that level.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I mean, we can get out there, we can do our rain
Sure we
dance
can,
and
right.
see what happens.
Right.
So, immigration we touched on. My son deals with, for the job that he has,
Right.
my younger son, deals with H-1B visa employees.
Sure.
And, it's an interesting conversation some days.
Right. And when I owned my property management company, we used them, in the summertime. We used them to do laundry, to deliver linens, to clean houses. But once COVID hit, it became so arduous and virtually impossible to get them that we just stopped trying. So it affects every industry.
And that changes, and you're still paying them you pay them a competitive wage in the market.
We pay them a very competitive wage.
Okay.
We had waiting lists for people to come work for our company.
Okay, that's because you're a great employer.
Well, we're a pretty darn good employer. We love our people.
Okay, so we talked infrastructure, defense.
Right.
We're spending a lot of money going into other people's issues.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
NATO. We are a large portion of what NATO's defense is. But, we have NATO saying, well, if you do, which I think the Greenland issue's resolved.
Sure.
How much police work do we do before it really starts to hurt us? We have the largest defense budget of any nation on this planet.
Of course.
And not even close.
Of course.
To number 2 or number 3.
Of course we do.
And number 2 and number 3 combined together still doesn't equal what we're putting out.
Right.
How do we maintain it without burdening us as the taxpayer?
Well, first off, and I even hate to say this, but we have so much waste and abuse. We can do both. And I'll give you an example in just a minute, but again, our charge isn't our main charge, of course, is the United States. But the United States of America is on this planet to protect the world. That's our job.
Okay.
We can 100% service all of our citizens and protect the world at the same time. We have the resources, we have the ability. What we need is the political courage to tell these people no more.
So you embrace the Monroe Doctrine?
A little bit. For
us controlling our own hemisphere, so to speak.
Correct. It's national security. Peace in the Middle East is paramount to the security of the entire world. I've been to Israel. I went on a sponsored trip there in 2019. I've sat across the table from Hamas. I've had the conversations, and I've seen the evil in their eyes, this close to me and you. And they mean it. When a leader of Hamas looks at me and says, and I say, what's the resolution? And he looks at me and says, when Israel is no more.
That's not an acceptable resolution.
That's not an acceptable resolution. But that's his resolution.
Right.
Make no bones about it.
So your support for Israel is unequivocal?
Unequivocal.
Okay.
We had the horrific attack on October 7th. Well, the spring prior to that was, I actually submitted the anti-Semitism bill. And forgive me again for my timeline, but I'm going to say maybe in March or April or May of that year prior to that happening.
Right.
Because I continued to see the escalation. And I've stayed in contact with many of the folks that I went on the trip with many Israelis, and continue to hear the escalation and the stories around the world and around the country, in our universities and so on. And I said, we don't have a definition in the state of North Carolina. So how can we prosecute anyone? Well, we don't even have a definition of what it is.
Right.
And that was all I was trying to do. And that took a year and a half to get passed. So yes, unequivocal support for Israel.
Recently, there was people that essentially broke into a church service.
Yes, sir.
Disrupted the church service.
Yes, sir.
I'm of the, I have my own belief system. I attend church on a regular basis. If you do, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine. regardless of how you choose to worship, it's called a sanctuary for a reason. Where does the federal government step in? If they go into a church, is that a hate crime?
Absolutely.
Should they be prosecuted? Should they be prosecuted at a federal level for doing that?
They are breaking a federal law.
Okay.
They should be prosecuted at a federal level.
So Pam Bondi should be issuing subpoenas.
Absolutely.
Okay, regardless of, well, I'm so-and-so and...
I don't care who you are.
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
I think we're both old enough to remember people protesting in Vietnam.
Sure.
Okay. It didn't matter who you were. If you broke the law, you broke the law.
You sure did.
Okay, and maybe because of who you were, you only spent one night in jail versus a little bit longer.
Right.
But, are we headed to that? Or are we headed down to that road? I have not seen our nation so polarized.
Since Vietnam. I agree with that. I was just talking about this the other night with some folks in Eatonton. Throughout our 250-year history, we've been in way worse places, friend. We really have. And we've always come out on top. And we'll come out on top again.
Oh, yeah, we're at 250 years.
We're at 250 years. And Vietnam was really, really bad. And this is really bad, but understand how much worse Vietnam would have been if we were in the era of social media.
I couldn't even imagine.
It would make looking like what we're dealing with, a bad day at the park.
Well, so we would probably be censoring stuff coming out of Vietnam so it wouldn't get here.
Correct.
Which would be no different than what Iran did. Sure. Because,
Sure. What makes us great is the ability to stand up. To protest, to stand up, to stand against your government when they're not treating you right. That's what makes us great, and I encourage it all the time. Look, man, if your voice isn't being heard or you're being wronged, stand up and say something. But don't go tear down the neighborhood to do it. Don't flip cars. Don't attack people. Don't bite people's fingers off.
When I moved here, there was the issue about Confederate monuments.
Yes, sir. Still is.
And it's not going away.
Right.
I'm of the opinion that someone paid to put that in place.
They did.
Okay. Whether it is a private group, maybe they no longer exist.
Sure.
Okay. But they paid to put it in place. It was agreed upon at that time. It's part of our history. And maybe it's a dark page of our history.
Sure.
Okay. Because I don't think it's right that, we had slavery. But it's something, if we tear down the monuments, we lose the memory of.
That's correct.
And if I walk my granddaughter down the road and she's going to say, Granddad, what's that? Right. And I can say, well, this is a time that we had a difference of opinion in our nation. Right. Of how people should be treated.
Right.
And we decided that everyone should be treated equally.
Right.
That's an opportunity. That's an education.
Right.
And then to tear down that.
You never have the conversation.
You don't have the conversation. And, I hail from Maryland. Okay. We were, quote, a northern state. My genealogy says I had people who were on both sides of the conflict. But, we had battles in Maryland, battles in Pennsylvania, and then down through the South. Just down the street from me, a neighbor has a little hole in their house from a Union cannonball bouncing into their house. That is, they have a little piece of plexiglass over it. So we have a lot of history here.
Sure.
And we've made a lot of progress. Now, I've been part of the community for less than 5 years. But I have to think that we've made a lot of progress over the last 160 years to get to where we're at today. Yeah. Some of it, I think, maybe we've had some regression in it over the last decade and change.
Yeah, I would say probably over the last 15 years.
Yeah, because we've been unable to have good, solid conversations. And the way that we get better is when someone who has a different opinion than you can sit down and talk to you directly and say, you sat across from the leader of Hamas. Right. you had a difference of opinion, okay? Albeit a very dire difference of opinion.
Right.
It didn't come to blows, okay? You stated
We
yours.
actually finished lunch.
Okay.
It just got real quiet.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. But what I'm saying is, we should be able to share what's on our mind and not have to worry about the word police.
Correct.
Occasionally, we might say something that's not intended. Okay.
I'm probably not the most politically correct person on the planet.
Nor am I. And
I'm
you know,
extremely passionate.
some of my employees say, you know, that was okay to say 25 years ago. I'm like, I'm sorry. I said, you have to understand, I grew up 50 years ago.
Right.
Okay, so
Right.
that was what I grew up with. I'm trying to learn just like you're trying to learn.
I grew up in the 60s and 70s.
It's not
Right.
denigration, it's just a word.
Right.
Okay, it's not the big words to everybody, okay? It's not. It's just impression of what goes on.
Right.
Okay, so we have different opinions because our life experiences are different.
Right.
So,
So I've been called out a couple times on the floor. When I did my anti-Semitism bill, we had one Jewish member in the Senate and one Jewish member in the House. And when I introduced that bill on the Senate floor, they made it racial. A Jewish senator
I know where you're going with
and
this.
a couple of black senators made it racial. They never came to me, they never talked to me. They used it for grandstanding, is what they did.
Right.
And one of them called me out because we're trying to get rid of the books in the libraries and the bad books and so on, and they're saying that we're trying to erase their history over time.
Okay.
And my immediate response to them was, I'm not the one that's trying to tear down all the statues.
Gotcha.
And I think that was,
That probably poked the bear.
I got a little bit of kickback for that, but when I sat down and talked to them afterwards, they understood where I was coming from, and I had a relationship with them. It wasn't the first time that I talked to them, and that's what I do is I talk to everyone, so I know where they're coming from. I know where Senator Grafstein's coming from when she debates a bill on the floor because I spent the time to get to know her.
Right.
And what makes her tick. Right? So, we had a flash on the floor, and I said that, but I meant it. It's a part of our history. Is it a good part? No, it's not a good part. Can we erase it? No, we can't erase it, but we can learn from it.
I think a wise person said, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
That's exactly right. And, I've got and we don't have time to get into that today, but, I've got some things that happened to me. I was born in, the South Philly projects. We had whites, blacks, Hispanics. We had everything. We weren't anything but poor. Shortly my dad got transferred to Florida. And, it was the 70s, late 60s, early 70s.
Okay.
So, they were still, doing the whole, combining all the students into black and white schools and all this stuff. And, the whole segregation thing was happening. And so there was a lot of stuff going on down there.
Yeah.
And I really got exposed to a couple things that shook me. Like when I talk about them today, I still get a little bit emotional. They were so traumatizing to me in the way that people treated black people. And I couldn't wrap my head around it. And what I got from that was, I'm never going to be that person, and I'm never going to be that person. And that has stuck with me to this day. If anybody wants to talk about that, I'm happy to talk about it. And a few of my colleagues know what I'm talking about, and they know my history with it.
Well, it's your history. It's a snapshot of a time where this nation was.
Right.
That this nation hopefully will never return to.
Right.
But our children weren't exposed to that.
That's correct.
Their children
That's correct.
aren't exposed to that, so they don't have that benefit. It's like 9/11.
Right.
I remember that day quite vividly.
As do I.
my son came home, will they stop showing on TV? Only things on TV is this. And we had to sit down and talk to him, and we put a, I wouldn't say a Barney tape in, but we put something in the VCR. There's a whole new generation that doesn't understand what took place.
They don't. Right.
We have forgotten about what we felt as Americans.
Right.
And we can't share that with them because they didn't live through it.
Right.
They can read about it, but they didn't live through it.
Right.
Assassination of John F. Kennedy. I was not born yet.
Right.
So that didn't impact me the way it did my sister or my parents.
Sure.
But, it's these things that you live through and you learn that frame what we are at today. We had a popular person, Charlie Kirk, was assassinated.
Right.
And, whether you like Charlie Kirk or you don't like Charlie Kirk, becomes immaterial of the fact that this was a human being that was assassinated.
That's right.
And just, give peace to the family, give peace to the people who supported him, and allow them to mourn and reference however they choose to do so. The same way as if somebody who speaks the exact opposite from him, And I don't see that on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it is because we've become so desensitized because of social media, because of, they're not news outlets anymore, they're opinion outlets. Let me just give you news.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny that they put...
days are gone. I know I'm aging myself, y'all, sorry. But,
well, even Walter Cronkite even had...
Yeah, he had a little bit of...
Yeah, he had his agenda, but...
Yeah, there's a lot of turmoil, there's a lot of, we need to make sure that people understand, what built this great nation.
How do we turn that flame back?
Right. I think, and I don't really know how to say this without sounding kind of wrong, but kind of my approach. I use the example, and people will verify that they've seen it 1,000 times. When we have downtime on the House or Senate floor, the Republicans huddle on their little thing, the Democrats huddle on their little thing. Well, if there's a group of Democrats over there huddling up, I'm going to get right in the middle and go, okay, who are we talking about?
You're getting the other team's huddle.
Yeah, who are we talking about?
Okay.
Let's figure it out. Talk to me about this. Why do you feel this way? Right? And be able to have those conversations. What you see on TV is the far right and the far left going at it because either they want to be famous,
lost the middle.
They want to be rich or they want to be famous.
Right.
Or they want to be both. Most people that go to D.C., and I've had these conversations with several congressmen and several senators on both sides of the aisle, I promise you. Most of the people up there just want to come and they want to get stuff done for their district, for their state. They're not even, there's 435 members of Congress. We hear from 5 of them, right?
Yeah.
So it isn't what people really think it is. It's mostly people trying to work together to make the country better, to make their state better, to make their community better.
But we see the corralling of parties.
Right.
When Congress is, the House of Representatives, a lot of votes come down almost on party lines.
Of course they do.
And, 25 years ago, it wasn't necessarily party lines.
Right.
We were... Maybe I need to go back more than 25 years. Forgot that. That was still the same. The same.
So.
Yeah. This was the same millennium.
Right.
We used to be able to have people that you could reach across the aisles and say, "Okay, Bobby, why are you opposing this? And what can we do to get your vote?"
Right.
And it's not, well, you can withdraw the bill.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It was constructive criticism that you could do a purple huddle and try to get some buy-in there. And I think, and I've said this to other candidates, 90 to 95% of everything we agree upon. We agree that we want America to be a great nation.
Absolutely.
We agree that we want the best for our citizens. We want no one to suffer with poverty. We want everyone to have food on the table. We agree those things.
Sure.
How we get to that point is where we disagree.
I apologize for that. Sorry, folks.
I mean, you can take it on air, we'd be happy to share it and put it on speaker.
Right,
Okay?
right. So, you know, I'll address it at the state level first, then we'll go to the federal level. So at the state level, and again, my numbers are always a little skewed because it moves all the time. But right at 90% of the legislation we pass in the state of North Carolina is bipartisan legislation.
Okay. But what we
Just
see,
a number for folks,
but what we see,
is the 2%.
right,
2% of the legislation that you see is because it got vetoed, or it's a social issue, and some things we're just not going to agree on. That's why there's two separate parties.
right,
To me, it's a check and a balance. Understanding, and this is oftentimes what we lose sight in the state and the federal government, is the pendulum always swings. So be careful the laws you put in as your Republicans, because one day you won't be in charge, and those Democrats will have the same rules,
yeah.
and you're not going to like it.
And that's the same way I'm watching, oh, well, we're going to change what the filibuster rule is.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
don't do that.
right. Remember, it's going to go the other way one day,
Yeah.
and they're going to have the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the state level, you can mitigate that a little bit. We'll take the 2024 election. Is that right? 2024.
Yeah, presidential election.
Right, presidential election. When we realized that we had lost a couple of council estate seats,
Right.
but we still, we had a supermajority in the Senate and we were one short of supermajority in the House. We changed a bunch of laws, like moving the Board of Elections over to
Right.
the auditor, who was a Republican. So a lot of things we changed so things wouldn't get drastic, right? Well, what's going to happen when the pendulum swings? Are we going to be able to get those things done still? Maybe not, because we might not have the supermajorities.
Right.
Right? So if we don't have those supermajorities, those things that we changed are going to remain the same when a Democrat auditor is put in place.
Mm-hmm.
So then we have a problem again.
Right.
So be careful what we do as Republicans, because they're going to switch it back.
And this
And
is
it's going to go both ways.
Listen,
Same at the
Mr. Bullock is great.
He is. He's done a
Okay.
phenomenal job.
But you don't know who's going to succeed him.
That's correct.
And you don't have control. So
That's correct. Be very cautious.
Yes.
It's the same thing at the federal level. So many of the folks want to just go in there and just wreak havoc and change all these laws to really benefit the Republican Party, and we're going to do this. And we'll understand it's a lot harder at the federal level to get those laws changed back the way you want them.
Right.
And it's probably not going to happen. So be very, very cautious of what we're doing at the federal level, or we're going to get ourselves in a pickle. And we don't want that.
earlier in our interview,
Yeah.
you talked about deregulation.
Right.
Is that something that you would try to spearhead?
I've already begun.
It being inside the beltway of the Capitol?
Absolutely. It's something I've already begun with our federal partners. We're so restricted at the state level when it comes to the Division of Water Quality, Division of Water Resources, CAMA, the Corps of Engineers. Their original mandates, the book's this thick, right?
Right.
Well, now the book's this thick and it's 3 of them. And most of it hasn't been laws that have been passed. It's been rules they've changed or things they've changed. So
It's kind of like the Obamacare bill that was.
yeah, you can't even begin to talk about affordability, which
Right.
what a great buzzword, right? Whatever. The affordability, right? You can't even talk about affordability until you get to deregulations. What it costs, as far as environmental impact studies for this, for that. I have several circumstances where it's taken a developer 2 years to start a project because of the runaround and the regulations that he gets from all the agencies.
Right.
Well, where's he passing that cost on to?
you.
The end consumer,
Yeah, right.
So there is no affordability until you deregulate. The environmental agencies, particularly through Biden, when it comes to just building the home itself,
Right.
are so strenuous and so cost overrun, you can't talk about affordability. It costs too much to build the home. You're so worried about, the absolute energy security. And yeah, we have to have all that, of course, but it's gone so far over the top.
And here we sit in the Straffy old house.
Right,
yeah.
right. So you have to be practical. You have to start at the top, and the top is deregulation. And then you can start talking about, okay, well, how do we lower the price of a 2x4? You can't even have that conversation.
And we just lost one of the 2x4 makers.
We did. We did.
In a neighboring county.
We did. And I had talked with him. He came to me too late, and I did chastise him for that because he didn't come to me soon enough.
Raise the flag early.
Right, and that's what I told him. I said, you've known me for quite some time, and you know I'm accessible. He said, yeah, but I really thought we were going to figure it out, and then the tariffs came, and that bottomed me out. And I said, I understand that. And what the North Carolina USDA has done and what the federal USDA has done to help mitigate that has been phenomenal. Is it perfect? No, it isn't perfect. He had most of his work going to China. And his mill was already in a little bit of trouble.
Right.
He was already thinking about closing the mill and consolidating in Elizabeth City. And we talked through that. I don't know how many different times we talked on the phone about the best way moving forward. I was trying to guide him the best that I could. I got him in touch with the state USDA director, and what they try to do is they work internationally through the federal USDA to try and to find different markets.
Right.
So he had a China market. Well, let's find an Indonesia market or a Thailand market where you can ship your lumber there, and you can work through them, and diversify a little bit. So is it enough to save his mill? No. And that sucks. That really sucks. But he's going to survive with the one mill. Right. Not 1 million. The one mill. M-I-L-L. Nothing else. 2 L's.
Okay.
And is it ideal? No. And do people lose their jobs? Yeah. And that's terrible. Right. It's terrible. It's
horrible when anyone loses.
Yeah. Being in that situation is a terrible situation. Do I think what we're doing in the tariff area is working? I do believe it's working. I spend a lot of time with my farmers in all of my communities. I attend as many soil and water conservation districts meetings as I can. Our soil and water district in Northeast is different as we have 5 different counties. So we're an entire district. Most other soil and water have just one county. Right. They're their own little district. But we have 5 counties, so it's pretty diverse on what the needs are and what's happening in our area, right? So going to those, you learn a lot. You learn about, okay, the commodities prices are a problem for us. We have too many soybeans in the world because we don't have enough markets. So I've reached out to the federal USDA folks. A couple of them, I won't use their names today. They wouldn't mind, I don't think, but I'm not going to use their names. And how do we get past this crisis? Giving them money doesn't fix the problem. So how do we get past the crisis? We got to open markets. Right. Right. Well, that doesn't take 2 days. It takes 2 years. Mm-hmm. So, and this is words coming out of my soil and water supervisors and my soil and water elected officials. Some farmers are going to lose their farms, and that's I can't imagine. I cannot imagine that happening to them. That's just what's going to happen, and I'm very, again, I'm not a politically correct guy, so when we have these conversations, I just tell them, look, this is what's going to happen. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm just a messenger, and we need to work together to figure out how to fix it.
What about foreign ownership of?
We have passed a law in North Carolina that if you are in, I believe there's 18 countries now that are banned from buying any property in the state of North Carolina.
Okay. Federal level.
Right. They need to do the same thing.
Okay. I mean,
these, particularly China is coming because they have the resources. They're probably the only ones that have the resources to do it. They're coming in and they're buying lands that close to military bases. They're buying farmland. They're buying, Smithfield Foods. Yeah. If we can't protect our food security, then we can't survive as a nation. And allowing that to happen to me is just mind-boggling that it even happened to begin with. how do we take that back? I have no idea how we can take that back, but we got to figure something out because, they could say, okay, well, we're just not going to produce any more pork at Smithfield. What in the world?
Well, I guess we'll have to go back to hog farming.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Again, let's kill those regulations.
Yeah.
The overbearing regulations.
Well, we have an ordinance in town getting ready to take effect about having livestock.
Right.
So
in the neighborhood, right?
Within the corporate limits of the town of Hershey.
Sure.
Yeah.
If it isn't zoned agriculture, then you should have livestock.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the way it is in Currituck as well.
Yeah.
I live on South Spot Road. One side is agriculture, one side is not.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just the way it's zoned.
And unbeknownst to me, I guess I could have had a cow and milk it up until this point. So, put a couple roosters in the backyard.
Actually, my neighbor had one for about 2 years.
Okay.
I think it is currently feeding them.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Several of my neighbors have horses. It's great.
I hope that's not. They're not going to feed off those.
No.
Okay.
No.
Good.
There's tons of challenges. But again, I think what I bring to the table is I've done it. I've introduced legislation. I've passed it. When someone asked me when I first came into the house, I went and met with the county manager. I hadn't even been sworn in yet. I went and met with him. He said, what can I do for you? I said, well, I'm really here to see, what you need. And the first thing he said was, well, I've been doing this for almost 30 years. I've never had a representative come and ask me that question, by the way.
Right.
I said, well, that's pretty cool. But I felt it was important that I know what they needed. And he said, the only thing I need you to do for me is to not do anything to me and to keep bad stuff from happening to me. So that's what I...
That sounds pretty simple, doesn't it?
It's pretty simple because a very large majority of what we do at the state and federal level is to keep bad things happening to our people.
Right.
If they're trying to raise our taxes or trying to take something away from us, if they're trying to toll the ferries, if they're trying to ban the shrimp, whatever they're trying to do to us, it's my job to keep that from happening.
So you win the primary, you win the general election, you're headed to DC.
Right.
They ask you, give me 3 committees that you want to be on.
Right.
Have you given thought to that?
A little bit of thought to that, yes, sir. Veterans is extremely important to me. My dad served 2 tours of Vietnam on our riverboat. He was my stepfather. Of course, I didn't know him, before he went to Vietnam.
Right.
But talking with his sister and talking with his parents and his relatives, he came back a different person. And he spent his entire life filled with hate and anger. And he would have glimpses. He did a lot of things for us. He adopted. My mom was 20 years old with 3 kids with a 9th grade education. He adopted all 3 of us and raised us like his own, and taught us some incredible lessons and values. But he was angry, and I didn't understand why.
Right.
I began to understand when I went into the Army. And where I was stationed, a very large majority of my unit were getting to where they were starting to retire from the Army, and they were Vietnam veterans. And seeing the effects of PTSD before it was cool to say even talk about it, right? I'm sorry, I just lost the word. The guy that's in charge of the motor pool sergeant hears a loud noise and jumps underneath his desk. It's a problem, right?
Yeah,
it's a problem,
it is.
right? And just the things that people would do just because they would have a flashback or things would happen, and just experiencing that was really eye-opening. But it's too late for me. I could never have a relationship with my father of any substance, but I started to understand it. And I started to dig into it a little bit. And if I can help a veteran or a veteran's child to have a better life, then I need to do that because I have the ability to do that. All veterans issues are important to me. I was a co-sponsor of the bill when we eliminated the tax on military retirement in North Carolina. anything we can do for them. We say we're the most veteran-friendly state. We've done a lot. We've got a lot more to do. In order to do a lot of those things, we have to have the help of the federal government.
Right.
Because we are limited on what we can do at a state level. So working on those challenges obviously was very important to me. Infrastructure, roads, transportation. My district will have, I think, all but 2 of the ferries in the whole state of North Carolina.
Oh, well, maybe they can redraw the lines and you can get all
Maybe
the ferries.
so, what the heck?
Yeah.
What the heck? So that's extremely important to me. And education. When I became a county commissioner, I'll try to make this as brief as possible. When I became a county commissioner, my daughter had just graduated from high school. And we had 1 student that had their associate's degree. And that made the Coastland Times, that made every local newspaper. It was a big deal, right? Well, I was like, why don't we have more? Where are our programs? And, why don't we have more people that can do HVAC and do plumbing and be mechanics? So as I started digging into that, I realized that we just didn't have the programs.
Right.
And look at us now, by really championing our community colleges. And like in the state of North Carolina, that's what's going to bring us forward. Mm-hmm. When this economic development comes to Eastern North Carolina, our community colleges are so nimble. You go tell COA what they want, and they'll give it to you.
Yeah.
You can't do that at UNC Wilmington. You can't do that at NC State. It takes years to change their curriculum. Even Chowan Community College is gearing up for what's getting ready to happen in Eastern North Carolina. So they're nimble, they're fast. So education is important to me. Currently in the United States, we have 1 path to graduation. And it is a path designed for you to go to a 4-year university.
Right.
Well, in the last session, I introduced a bill that gave you a dual-track diploma. You could go the university route, or you could go the CTE route. You still had have the same amount of math,
Right.
but it was different math. It was math that was geared toward
Your vocation.
your vocation, or whether you're going to college, right? We had full support of that. House, Senate, Republicans, Democrats. Heard it in a couple of committees, and the UNC School of Government contacted me and said, we think that might be unconstitutional. And it is.
Oh,
It's
interesting.
unconstitutional at the state level, and it's unconstitutional at the federal level.
Okay.
And if we'd have gone through with that at a state level, of course, someone would have to sue us.
Right, which I'm sure they would have.
They would have, correct. Probably the UNC system.
Yes, and the same people who you're subsidizing.
Yeah, that we pay about $800 million
Yeah,
to.
okay.
It's absurd, right? So, and then at the federal government, we would have lost our funding, right? So,
Okay.
of course, what do I do immediately? I contact my federal partners in Congress and Senate and say, this has got to change.
Right.
Because this isn't working.
So,
And now what's the big talk? Let's get rid of DPI and let's change how people graduate high school. So we're moving in that direction.
Okay.
I didn't make that happen, but helping people understand, yeah, you can do all these CTE, you can do all the stuff you want to, but it's extra work on a student to get their certificate because they have to do this other stuff.
Right.
So, we in North Carolina, we lose about 25% of our students between the age 18 and 30. We don't know where they go, where they're working, what they're doing, how they're doing, no clue. And that's our labor market.
It is, but at the same point in this community, if they go off to a 4-year school,
They're not coming back.
They're not returning to the community.
No, because there isn't work for them from a 4-year university.
To justify their investment in a 4-year university.
Correct.
So
Those are extremely important to me. There's other things that are important to me, but the whole healthcare thing, and I don't think that I would get on a healthcare committee. Not my first term. I think that would be a stretch for me. But since I've been in the General Assembly, that's what I've worked on. I've fought vehemently and introduced legislation with other House members and Senate members to go against the pharmacy benefit managers, the PBMs.
Right.
This anti-PBM bill that I've run for 4 terms. And we're making some progress. We're doing better. Got a lot of work to do. Same thing with healthcare. We did so many things for healthcare to lower the costs, but there's still so much to do, and we get so much resistance from big pharma, from the medical societies and so on.
Well, what I've noticed the trend, and it's not just here, it's around the country, is the consolidation of healthcare.
Right.
You're under X system, Y system, or Z system, and you see the doctors at X, Y, and Z.
Right.
No longer are you able to say, listen, Bobby, you're the greatest, doctor for what my need is. Let me go see you.
Right.
And then you can't refer me to somebody who is a specialist in
A different network.
a different network.
Right. It's a racket.
Yeah.
It's a giant racket.
You go and it's
Yeah.
like my wife's cousins just went through a horrific accident and they're facing multiple surgeries for recovery. And she asked me this morning, she says, who's responsible? It wasn't their fault. Someone said they had an arson in the house they were living. Who's responsible for that? I said, I think they're going to be responsible for it. I said, but they pay what they can pay. And if it becomes too burdensome, then there's other recourses, not ideal, but you can always say, listen, I'm bankrupt, I can't pay this anymore.
Right.
It's a horrible way to say, to escape from debt.
Right.
But it's something that they may face because of things out of their control. Yeah. So I know we're getting close to wrapping up here.
Okay.
You probably have plenty of other things that you can be doing today other than sitting down with me.
Well, I set out some time, so whatever.
So I'm going to give you the opportunity, like I've had other candidates, I'm going to ask you to speak into the camera, tell them why they should come out and vote for you, and how they can find you, your website. Okay. So it's all yours.
Super. So, first off, I appreciate the time. That was a great conversation.
I do too.
And, every time we have these conversations, you just learn more.
Yep.
It's pretty neat. So thank you for that. So, as we talked about in the video, I'm Senator Bobby Hanig. What I bring to the table is that I've done the work. Every candidate in this race can say they're going to help healthcare, they're going to help the veterans, they're going to do this, whatever it is they say they're going to do, but none of them have done it. A couple have served in the military, a couple have been a sheriff, and it's all commendable and great. But when it comes down to helping the citizens of North Carolina, no one in this race has done more than I have. I've introduced legislation in every aspect of everything that we talk about. We go to all these meetings and talk about all these things that we're going to do and so on. Every single thing we've talked about, I've introduced it, I've championed it, I've sponsored it, I've co-sponsored it, I've talked about it on the House and Senate floors, I've argued it, I've been in the trenches. I have proven that I will stand up against whoever it is that comes after our citizens in Eastern North Carolina, and I will absolutely protect them to the nth degree. I've proven that time and time again, whether it's Shrimpgate or tolling the ferries or the Let 'em Spawn bill or Medicaid expansion, whatever it is, if leadership is doing something to affect my people, then I'm not going to tolerate it, and I'll do whatever it takes and stand on any hill to keep that from happening. So I greatly appreciate your support over the years. It's been the opportunity of a lifetime to serve Eastern North Carolina and to serve this great state. I'm looking forward to the next chapter. I've served with Don Davis. I know what he deals with, and I've talked to him, and he knows why I'm running. He knows because he's not doing the right thing, and he needs to get out of there. What I want people to fully understand is the magnitude of what we're going through right now. If Don Davis becomes our congressman for a third term, the first thing he does is he elects Hakeem Jeffries to be the Speaker of the House. And everything will commence from there. Everything that Donald Trump has done in the last year will be wiped out in 30 days. And we just cannot have that. We're too great of a nation. We have a lot of work left to do around the world. I'm looking forward to the challenges. I humbly appreciate your support. You can go to BobbyHanigForCongress.com if you so choose to pull a few nickels out of the sofa. That'd be great. If you want to volunteer, you can go to BobbyHanigForCongress.com as well. I look forward to seeing y'all on the trail. Look forward to bringing this home for Eastern North Carolina. Thank you so much.
Bobby, thank you so much. Thank you for everything you've done for our community.
Yes, sir. My pleasure.
And I look forward to you continuing to serve.
Me too.
Okay? Thank you.